We can start, I guess. So, well, thank you very much to all of you for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where you are. And welcome to the 9th East-West workshop on industrial archaeology. I'm happy to see some familiar faces and many friends from different parts of the world here today. I'm Juan Manuel Cano Sanchez, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Association for Industrial Archaeology, to which council member I belong to, and also from the Institute for Cultural Heritage and the History of Science and Technology, where I work as an associate professor of the University of Science and Technology, Beijing. So, well, this is a special workshop. It's a birthday workshop, if you want to, because this year in 2025, we are celebrating the 200th anniversary of the modern railways. And I say modern railways because transportation over tracks, being these tracks wooden or iron rails, is much older, but it was in 1825 when, for the first time, railway, more particularly the Stockton to Darlington railway, used a locomotive for the first time in history for transportation. So in our workshop today, we are going to take a very long railway trip, but don't worry, because it's going to be 2 hours, 2 hour long. This trip is going to bring us around the archaeology, the engineering, and the heritage of early railways in Europe and Asia. Our train will depart from China, where we are going to have a look at the early rails used there, produced and used there from the point of view of historical and archaeometric analysis. The next stop will be Poland, where we will continue with this archaeological approach to discover a forgotten railway site. Next station will be Indonesia, where rather than an archaeological approach, where we will learn from a more heritage angle about a very particular railway there that demonstrate, by the way, a very strong east-west connection. And finally, we will have the final stop in Beijing, looking at the architecture of early railways from the angle of building archaeology. So today we have 4 presentations. Usually we have only 3. So I need to ask the speaker, please, to try to make your presentations 20 minutes or shorter. And for the rest of you, for all the attendees, as you may know, because I see many familiar names and faces, at the end of these 4 presentations, we will have time for discussion, time for questions and answers. So I would like to ask you, please, to keep your microphones and your cameras off during the presentation so we can focus better on the talks of the speakers. And later in this final question and answer section, everybody is welcome to open microphones and cameras if you want to, and to engage with the speakers in discussion. In the meantime, you are very welcome to use the chat facility. You can text your questions or your comments there in the chat facility of Zoom. Actually, considering that today we have 4 speakers, it can be maybe a good idea to try to solve some questions in the chat facility as well, to make it sure that every question is answered before we finish this railway trip around Europe and Asia. So I will not spend more time with the introductions. So let's move directly to the first presentation, a review of research on China's early steel rails heritage that is going to be delivered by Professor Yibin Fan, who got a PhD on engineering from the University of Science and Technology, Beijing, in the history of science and technology, and is currently a professor of history of science and technology at the Institute the Institute of History of Natural Sciences of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Besides, she serves as the Secretary General of the Industrial Archaeology and Industrial Heritage Research Group of the Chinese Society for the History of Science and Technology, and many more things, but I think everybody is already familiar with her CV. So let's move directly to the presentation, which is the most interesting part. So Professor Fang, please, the floor is yours. Continue our trip. Now we go to Poland where we are going to rediscover a brickworks narrow gauge industrial railway tunnel in Stolgin. I hope I am pronouncing that correct. And this presentation is going to be delivered by Dr. Paulina Romanovich, who graduated in history by the University of Szczecin in 2009 and in archaeology by the University of Łódź in 2010. And finally, she got her PhD in archaeology in 2014. She's working now at the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Particularly, she works for the Center for Medieval Archaeology of the Baltic region in Szczecin. She has actually a very wide array of research interest. Among them is the archaeology of modernity, which is very much related to the topic she's going to present today. So Dr. Romanovich, please, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Can you see the screen?
Yes, everything is working.
Okay, so thank you. After this impressive research by Professor Fang, my small case study will maybe look a little bit funny, but I will do my best to fit into this high level of this workshop. So as it was said, the topic of my presentation is the rediscovery of a brickworks narrow gauge industrial railway tunnel in Stołczyn, Poland. Firstly, I would like to thank organizers for invitation for such an interesting event. Industrial archaeology, as it may sound from the presentation of my person, is a kind of a coincidence for me. Just like the discovery of the tunnel I'm going to speak about. I am archaeologist mostly of the medieval period. But since I came back to my homeland after a lot of years of education myself, I started to dig into the history of this area because I was mostly born in Stołczyn and I live here since my little ages. And this became clear to me that I will have to shift my profession to the 19th and 20th century. My presentation also is a proof that there is a state of mind that some places and objects and elements of the surrounding space can be forgotten much faster than we might expect. Let me first begin from the area where we at. So Stołczyn, in German Stolzenhagen-Kratzwijk, is a suburb in the northern part of the Szczecin, which includes 3 villages of the medieval origin, an agricultural village of Stołczyn and 2 fishing settlements, Kraśnica and Glinki. In the written sources, there is information about a family of knights called von Stolzenhagen, who founded the settlement. They are mentioned for the first time in 1194. The name of the village, Stolzenhagen, appeared in documents a bit later in the 13th century. The first church of Stołczyn was already built in the 13th century, and you can see on the presentation the remains of this 13th century church, possible remains found inside the former standing temple. It was probably a timber-framed building. The present-day church was built in the 15th century in Gothic style. According to the medieval custom, there was a cemetery around the church, and we also found 2 years ago some graves around the church during the, let's say, excavation. Um, In the 14th century, also appeared information about the other two villages, Glinki, German Glinken, and Kraśnica, German Kratzwijk. Both were fishing villages separated from Stoczyn. Stoczyn, Glinki, and Kraśnica functioned like this for centuries until industrialization in the 19th century. This period significantly transformed the villages spatially and socially, turning them into a commune of farmers and workers from several industries: chemical factory, steelworks, brickworks, cement works, railways, and shipyard. Another turning point was the year 1945, where the international decisions were taken after the end of the Second World War. At the beginning of 1945, around 6,500 of people lived in Stoczyn. Most of them worked in the local industries. It was an ethnically homogeneous German population. The commune, which in 1939 was incorporated into the great city of Szczecin, still had its own administration and a mayor and evangelical church and a pastor. There was a school, several shops, and restaurants. In September 1945, Stoczyn was finally incorporated in Polish administration of Szczecin. During the next few years, new settlers came from eastern and central Poland, not always by their will, whereas most of the Germans were forced to leave their homeland. You can see on the presentation the building of the railway station in Stoczyn with a mural with representation of this 1945 and later years situation of people coming to Stoczyn after a long journey from the eastern Poland. Stoczyn is located on a clay deposit, and in the 19th and 20th centuries, its raw material became local gold. In written sources, a brickyard and a clay pit are mentioned for the first time in the document dated for the 1592. You can see it on the left, the first page of this document. However, information is known from an early 1540, confirming that existence of a brickyard in Kraśnica, which belonged to the St. Nikolai's Church in Szczecin, whereas the latest archaeological finds suggest that the chronology of brickyards in this area should be dated as early as the late Middle Ages, at least 15th century. However, the brick industry, based on the local clay deposits, fully developed in a much later period when this area became industrialized. According to the sources, 5 brickworks operated here in the mid-19th century, employing 130 families. These were 3 peasant brickworks with no mechanization and 2 owned by Schwinning from Langenberg. You can see the brick from the Schwinning's Stettin brickwork on the right on the screen. They were located along the road leading from Kraśnica to Babin, an agricultural estate situated north of Stoczyn. Maps from the 1877 and 1879 show at least 16 brickworks A second concentration, this is the first I said about from Kraśnica to Babin, and the second route, second concentration of brickworks occurred along the road between Przęsocin and Golęcino. This was prompted by the huge increase in demand for bricks in the region arising from industrial and residential development. One of these local brickworks at the end of the 19th century was owned by Alfred Brandy. You can see the name here, Alfred Brandy, a burgher from Szczecin, and was located near the present-day Kolejowa Street. There is a Kolejowa Street on this map. It was German Bahnhofstrasse. Unfortunately, many of the written documents about that provide information about the brick production technology used there and many other issues related to the functioning of this particular brickwork were lost during the Second World War. All that is known that it was later absorbed by the Eisenwerkkraft ironworks built in 1897. Plans, you can see the photos from the 1901 where there is Eisenwerkkraft steelwork connected with this brickwork by Alfred Brandy. The tunnel discovered in 2023 under Nad Odrą, this is Nad Odrą Street. The tunnel was found here, might be associated with operating of this company. The company was located here. This company, since the brickworks used the clay pit, located at today's Zamknięta Street. This is Zamknięta. It can be translated closed street, German Am Schwarzen Weg. So you can see there was a clay pit, there was a brickwork, and there was a street, one of the main streets leading from this part of suburb to the city of the Szczecin. To improve transport of extracted clay to the brick production site, a narrow gauge industrial railway tunnel was built under this street. This is a remarkable discovery, although some information was known about it. The tunnel and the brickworks narrow gauge railway route were shown in the pre-war photograph and plans from the time of the construction of the railway, dated to the 1894-97. However, it was not expected that remains of this tunnel still survived underground, especially as in the 1980s there was a gas explosion in this location that exposed the buried tunnel, and a lot of people expected that there was nothing lost. The start of the railway in the clay pit is captured in the photograph from 1901, and this is this photo. You can see the beginning of the route. Sorry. Many archival photographs clearly show the depression and the beginning of Nad Odrą Street and the entrance of the tunnel. I'm not sure, can I, once again, because I mixed the, okay, I will show you later where this is visible. The entire route is shown on the site plan from 1894, which was prepared for the purpose of building the main railway infrastructure in this area. So you can see the building with this mural I shown you earlier. It is situated here. There is a visible tunnel under the not Odrą, currently not Odrą Street, and this is Bahnhofstrasse, Kolejowa Street. The blue line shows the first route of this narrow gauge route. Because later, when there was built this main railway, it was obvious that it has to be built another tunnel, and it is under the railway. And the route changed for clay deposit to be bring into the Alfred Brandy. You can see the name as well here, brickwork. Based on the above-mentioned map and the archival photograph showing the end of the tracks and the clay pit, the length of the industrial railway route could be estimated about 350 or to 40 meters. It got slightly shortened after the iron railway tracks were laid and the second tunnel was built. Unfortunately, there is no information about the track of the tram road were made of, what the track of the tram road were made of. However, most likely they were made of steel. We also don't know anything about the gauge from the archival photograph of this exact industrial railway tracks. We can only guess that they were narrow gauge and that small carts were used, pushed by people. We can see on this photo just people on the route from the clay pit to the place of the brick production. This type of internal tramroad infrastructure was also known in other brickworks in Stockton, including the most famous steam brickworks of the Lindke family. However, there was no need to build a tunnel under the street to ensure a collision-free delivery of clay in connection with the route of the main street of the Stolzenhagen-Kratzwig commune. In September 2023, the building of the infrastructure of the Szczecin-Stołczyn, formerly known as Glinki Szczecin train line station started, revealing the forgotten tunnel, which once again fired the imagination of enthusiasts for this type of curiosity. The city historic preservation officer inspected the discovery along with representatives of the Office of Monuments Documentation and the Office of the Conservator of Historical Monuments of Western Pomerania. Despite the undoubted historical value of the tunnel, comprehensive research was not being planned. Therefore, it was only possible to gather some information during the construction work. On both sides of the Nad Odrą Street, bricked up entrance or exits of the tunnel with an arched vault were exposed. There were walls made of concrete inside, you can see, with the holes pierced for electrical wiring, which was most likely installed at the end of the 20th century. So at the end of the 20th century, some people working here saw the tunnel, but nobody reported that it is still visible there. The tunnel with the arched vault was made entirely of bricks. The measurements that were made under the conditions of the project's supervision included tunnel daylight opening wide, which was 2.5 meters. In places where it was possible to measure, the height was 2 meters. At the entrance from Kolejowa Street, the only one retaining wall of the tunnel survived. The preserved fragments of the tunnel was 7 meters long and it was entirely located under the street. As the work proceeded, it was found that unfortunately most of the tunnel was found to have collapsed, especially the part in the middle of the road. Therefore, only one vault construction elements and the retaining wall in the eastern exit of the tunnel from Kolejowa Street, as well as the vaulted entrance from the west, from Zamknięta Street, have survived. Still, I-beams had been placed above the tunnel, making it possible to use the street above quite intensively without risk collapse. These I-beams were the reasons why the entrance looked rectangular on archival photos. And this is what was I looking before. This archival photos from the beginning of the 20th century, and there is a visible some, especially here, tunnel under the Steinstrasse at this time, street. As stated previously, the Conservation Service inspected the discovery but did not order further investigation or excavation of the tunnel, which made it impossible to collect further information about the track, such as its gauge. Characteristic mining bucket was found inside the tunnel. These were used for loading material from the clay pit onto wagons that rode on the tracks. The bucket is shallow and wide, with a diameter of 400 millimeters and depth 200 millimeters. There is an arched bend in the middle of the profile, the bow, which was used to hang the bucket on the rope with a hook at the end. And for the final view for the area where we are at, I would like to show you the viaduct, which is now under the reconstruction, connected again with this rail reconstruction for the passengers from Szczecin to Police. And as you can see, there are possible some observations, and we with my friend are making them. So maybe soon there will be possible some new view for this viaduct dated back to the 1898. But as you can see, the same conservation service allowed the construction workers to build up this niches that were visible. It is said that it has to be reconstructed, but to be honest, I'm not sure how it will be possible, but let's give them some chance. For the end of this presentation, I will have to say that there is a lot of care about this industrial heritage in Poland, but still I think there is a lot to do in the meaning of the archaeological observation during the reconstruction of the still used infrastructure. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Romanovich. I think this was actually a very good example of how commonly industrial archaeology works, like cross-reading every source of information available onto the physical space, that comparison, cross-referencing of the archaeological record and the documentary record that allow us to produce explanations about the industrial past. So it was a very, very nice example of industrial archaeology research. Congratulations and thank you. We move now to Indonesia, where we are going to meet architect Arida Fitriana Yasmin, who is going to talk about Follow the Tracks Railway Heritage Management at the Ombilin Coal Mining Heritage of Sahuaglunto in Indonesia, as I have just said. Adida Jasmine, she is an architect trained at the University of Brawijaya. She got her degree in architecture in Indonesia in 2017. From there, she moved to the Netherlands, where she got a master's degree in the history of architecture and town planning from the University of Groningen in 2020, and where she is now writing her PhD in the same topic. She has research experience in different areas, for example, on the adaptive reuse of industrial heritage, which is closer to our topics here. And currently, she's doing research on the impact of the construction of railways and the development of railway architecture and town planning in the Dutch East Indies, which is the topic that she is going to present today. So, Jasmine, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Juan. Can you see my screen and can you hear me well?
Yeah, everything is working good.
Okay, perfect. Yes, yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the introduction and also for the kind invitation to share my research in this wonderful occasion. And as you might notice that my background might be a bit different than the previous speakers or the overall theme of this workshop, but yeah, I hope I can still give something that is still useful for all of you. So today I'm going to present a case study on railway heritage in Indonesia, specifically on the railways of Ombilin coal mining heritage of Sawalunto. And although this study has been presented previously at the Conference of Industrial Heritage in Sweden a couple of months ago, I hope this is still going to be interesting for you too. But before we got to the case study, I would like to briefly share my dissertation that I'm currently working on, which actually gave me the exposure to this topic in the first place. It's entitled Tracks in the City. It's about the impacts of railways in cities in Indonesia since 1864. So railways in Indonesia was a colonial railways. It was built in 1864 during the Dutch colonial period. It was first used to transport the agricultural products to the port, but also then it's made for the passenger transport. And it's also consists of many private and state railway companies, which grow especially between 1880 and 1900. And approaching the end of the Dutch occupation, which is around 1940s, there were more than 7,000 kilometers of rail and tramway lines built in the Dutch East Indies, which way more than the length of the railway that the Dutch actually built in the Netherlands at the same time. Yeah, so it's obviously has such a transformative impact, especially in the city. It's not only influenced the urban development, the urban expansion, but also the change in urban structure, the creation of a colonial society, and also the appropriation of European technology on how they impose this to the local population. And what really interesting, especially for me, is also how this also changed the course of modern architecture and town planning movement in the Dutch East Indies, especially since the early 20th century, where the European architects and planners come and work in the Dutch East Indies, and they adapt this European knowledge in designing buildings and cities, and they appropriate it to the climate and local building techniques and materials, which in the end, it created something of a novelty that is quite unique to the Dutch East Indies. As you can see some of the example that I show you here. And what also makes it fascinating is that railway companies was one of the biggest promoter of many modern architecture and urban planning projects in the Dutch East Indies. Yeah. But yeah, I'm currently on the last stage of my PhD, so that's about it that I can tell you about my dissertation. And hopefully next year I will have the final result. Yeah, so while my research focused in cities in Java Island, railways colonial railways was also built in the island of Sumatra, which brings us to the case study that I'm going to talk about today. So Sawalunto is located in the province of West Sumatra, and Sumatra is one of the main islands that is situated on the west side of the country, as you can see on the map. And Sawalunto was developed as a mining town in the late 19th century during the Dutch colonial period in Indonesia. And now, as a post-colonial city, Sawalunto is undergoing a transformation from a mining-based to a tourism-based economy, following the decline of the mining industry in the turn of the 21st century. After taking part in some physical intervention, which is based on the vision of heritage protection, since July 2019, umbilical coal mining of Sawalunto has been recognized as one of UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the extensive railway infrastructure actually plays a key role in the development of the city, both as a mining town and as well as a heritage site. So that's why in this presentation, I would like to focus on the railway heritage in this region and the significance of this groundbreaking technology that is now part of the outstanding universal values, followed by the challenge faced in the heritage management 6 years after the World Heritage nomination that needs to be brought to attention for future preservation. As I mentioned in the beginning, the history of Sawalunto cannot be separated from the history of colonization and exploitation in Indonesia. After a large deposit of coal was discovered near River Ombilin in 1876, there was an urgent need by the Dutch colonial government to develop a new means transportation, and in this case, railways. Sawalunto was a relatively small and deserted area surrounded by Bukit Barisan Mountain and was only accessible through footpath. At the time, the distance between Sawalunto and the city of Padang, which is the port city and also the capital city of West Sumatra, was at least 100 kilometers. And so this poses a big challenge. So that's why in 1878, Dutch railway engineer Klusenaar was commissioned to find a possible route. He designed the mountain railway inspired by the rack railway system invented by Nicolaus Reichenbach, which was first applied in the railway line between Witznau and Rigi in Switzerland in 1871. The line that Klusenaar proposed are from Sawalunto to Emahaven via Padang Panjang. So if we take a look at this map on the right, so the route runs from Sawalunto, which is the point on the right, and it runs from Sawalunto to Muaro Kalaban and Solok, and from there it climbs through the mountain to Padang Panjang, which is the dot on in the above. And from there, in the station, the line splits into two branches. One branch descends to the left through the gorge of the Ainai River to Emahaven, to the port, while the other branch descends to Fort de Kock and Payakumbuh. The railway line between Sawalunto and Emahaven finally finished in 1894. At the same time, construction for the infrastructure for coal production, processing, and storage facilities is also happening in the city of Sawalunto and also in the port in Padang. And this development has transformed Sawalunto from its rural to its industrial character. It became a bustling mining town with numerous facilities for the workers, especially such as housing, market, hospital, offices, and so on. And the population grew from only less than 500 inhabitants to 6,000 in the beginning of the 20th century. And I would say the West Sumatra's mountain railways was an engineering masterpiece, and these intricate engineering ensembles was such a representation of how European invention adapted to the tropical setting. So despite the hardship in terms of financial, technical, and also the topographical situation, they managed to tackle it. So besides the mountain railway, rail infrastructure also was built in the mining site and also in the harbor. Underground in the mining site, there are also approximately almost 4 kilometers of mine track. And there's also a cable car that was used to transport the coals, which was then demolished during the closure of the mining site. And on the architecturally speaking, due to its focus on the freight transport, most stations were built to its utmost simplicity. So Sawalunto Station, as you can see from the picture on the right below, it's just a simple bricks building with large iron platform roofs. So especially if we compare it to the imposing stations in Java, it's really different. And the rack and railway itself spanned across 155 kilometers. It's consists of a toothed bar lies in the middle between two adjacent rail, as you can see on the picture on the left. And it's also used the narrow gauge of 1067 millimeters, which is the standard gauge in the Dutch East Indies. And there were 32 tunnels were constructed, which one of them is about 800 meters long. And there were about 125 bridges were built, including this fascinating large parabolic incline bridge, which is one of the ingenious things that they designed to tackle the mountainous landscape. And besides accommodating the mining industry, the railway also opened up the Padang Highland as a tourism destination. Many European travelers have chosen Padang Highland as an alternative to complement their trip to Java, and it was one of the most beautiful mountain regions in the Indies. And one of the popular sites was this unique view of the Anai waterfall, which passengers can see from the train. So this unique landscape makes this railway journey one of a kind. And we move on to the post-mining and World Heritage process. So after the independence, Ombilin coal mines continued their operation through a state-owned enterprise called PT Bukit Asam. Meanwhile, the railroad system has been managed by the Indonesian Railway Company. By the end of the 20th century, mining activity had actually gradually declined. And after the last coal being transported by the train to Padang in 1999, in 2000, the mining site was officially closed. And consequently, the railway network also shut down. At the same time, the municipality was looking for a solution to survive as the population began to move out. The municipality develops a new vision to shift from mining-based economy to a tourism-based one. So we have seen all over the world that recently many potential sites have used World Heritage as a marketing tool to boost tourism development. And this is what exactly happened here. So since 2005, the municipal government has been so eager to apply for World Heritage designation. And they succeeded. In 2015, Sawalunto Old Town was included in UNESCO tentative list. But then after that, more studies was done following this nomination, and they realized that the existence of Sawalunto mining town was indebted to railway, and therefore it cannot be separated from the whole interpretation of the heritage site. And therefore, the protected area was then expanded to include 7 municipalities in regions. And in the end, in 2019, the coal mine heritage of Sawalunto was awarded to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The protected components, so there are 3 sites, as you can see from the map. It comprises of the mining site and the company town. And the site A, and then the cold storage facilities and the harbor of Emmahaven, which is in the site C, as well as the railway network connecting these two regions, which is called site C or area, the site B, I mean, or area B. And the railway heritage was only spread between site A and site B because major part of the port infrastructure has already made way for new development. And in the old town of Sawalunto, the railway station has been converted into a museum since 2005, where the visitors can learn more about the history of the railway in West Sumatra. Meanwhile, the processing area and its former railway system have transformed into a public park. There is also a plan to rehabilitate the cable car for railway for educational purposes, but it's still a plan. And the railway line connecting Sawalunto and Padang has been inactive, of course, since the closure of the mining site. Only from Padang to Pariaman and also the occasional tourist railway from Sawalunto to Muaro Calaban with this historic steam locomotive that still operated. Meanwhile, the incline bridge has served as a landmark and tourist destination. There's also a plan to reactivate the railway network as part of the Trans-Sumatra project and also the development of the historic rail route. However, for years, this plan has been stuck in the development stage. So after the nomination, the site has faced many challenges that can put the heritage property at risk. So in general, the city has faced challenges in accessibility and also the lack of amenities. And in railway heritage in particular, theft and vandalism poses a big challenge. Many rail sleepers were stolen and abandoned station buildings were vandalized. So this was evidence of the lack of regulation and protection from the heritage manager. It's also a lack of research focusing on industrial heritage in general or railway heritage in particular. So I think it can really use like a scientific research from the archaeology perspective as well. And for reactivating the railway line, illegal settlements and changing the land use also have made it really difficult. So the old railway line was occupied by many new developments and new houses were built too close to the tracks. The Indonesian Railway Company, as the owner of the heritage asset, involved in heritage efforts since 2009, but it's still focused in Java mostly. So, meanwhile, the railway heritage effort in Sumatra has been started a lot by private organization. But foremost, the major challenge will be the financial constraint. Reactivating and managing railway heritage is a really expensive project. So it's a big challenge as well. But to a greater extent, there's also still no policy regarding the railway heritage specifically. Furthermore, in the contested objects such as colonial railways, the heritage management also faced the challenge of ownership or heritage interpretation. This mining site had a dark history with the use of forced labor and the chain labor, which not only came from the local Minangkabau people, but also Japanese and Chinese. And although the heritage interpretation was made to accommodate the merge between European invention and the local knowledge and power, it can be seen still there is a reluctance from the local population to participate in heritage management due to this dark heritage association, which has limited public participation in heritage effort in Sawalunto. As a concluding remark, I would like to highlight the potential of railway heritage in the World Heritage Site. This is also something that I hope to outline from my dissertation, that by drawing a closer connection between railway infrastructure and the city, it might revive the key role of railway in heritage site and to further to use heritage as a driver of sustainable development. And in this case in particular, with the plan to create a historic rail route, promoting the integration between industrial heritage and the picturesque landscape can be a strategy. And with synchronizing the management plan with between railway and also the development of cities and regions within these heritage sites, I think can become a key role so that one day we can once again follow the tracks. So yeah, that's all for me, I think. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arida. Very interesting presentation. Thanks for bringing the heritage perspective to the workshop. And I am pretty sure after listening to your presentation that you are going to have a very smooth thesis defense, and you will be very soon a brilliant doctor. So congratulations for your work, and thank you very much for sharing your work with us in this workshop. I am going to move to the last presentation that is going to be delivered by myself. I think I don't need to introduce myself again. So I will start directly with the presentation. What I would like to say is a little bit now difficult for me to share my work after these three brilliant presentations. I feel the level of the workshop is pretty high, but well, I will try my best. So I am going to talk about railway architecture in Beijing, built by or with European people. And I will have a look at this architecture. I will approach this architecture from the perspective of building archaeology, from an archaeological perspective. Actually, this presentation, rather than introducing much research results, what I am interested in doing today is to introduce to a global audience our little, very young research group that we call Chinese International Early Railway Archaeology, or CIRA for short. In this group, little research group, we are interested in examining how all those international models, international treaties for railways and railway architecture were received in China, or were adopted or adapted to the Chinese context in the turn of the 20th century. Well, that is something to notice. I'm talking about early railway architecture, but in the Chinese context, we are talking mostly about the late Qing and the first years of the early Republic of China. That is, we are talking more or less about the last 2 decades of the 19th century and the first 2 decades of the 20th century. So the meaning of early railway architecture in China is pretty different from the meaning in the West. The chronologies are different. So when we focus on the material evidence for these railways, so far we have been working with 3. There are many more, but now we are focused on these 3 railway lines. And today I'm going to explain some ideas. I will introduce only the Imperial Railways of North China, perhaps better known as the Peking-Mukden Railway, and the Peking-Hankou Railway that Professor Fan has already mentioned in her presentation. I will focus on these 2 only because, well, this one, the Chentai Railway, is very much research in progress, and more importantly, it is in Hebei province. It is not in Beijing. So one of the main challenges that we find or we face to do archaeological research of railway architecture from this period is that, particularly in Beijing, I am talking now for the case of Beijing, much is actually gone. So the material evidence, the archaeological record, at least above the ground level, is particularly limited. Few buildings have been preserved, and those that have been preserved are often very much reused or protected or reformed So somehow that also limit the archaeological works that we can carry out on them. Still, something that is it's proven to be very useful for us. There is a very rich visual record for this building, so we use photography as a carrier of matter, photography to have remote access to this materiality that sometimes it is impossible to find in the field. What you are looking at now is Mayapu Station, one of the first terminals of the Imperial Railways of North China in Beijing, all of which that have been preserved, we believe. Well, here we are following actually a first identification made by Wang Wei and Peter Crash. All that remains is this plinth that you can see in the picture over here, because the station was destroyed at the turn of the 20th century in the context of the Boxer Rebellion. So we use plenty of visual sources, both old or historical photography, but also cartography that is essential to find these places in the field. So when we find these places, we perform a very basic, but at the same time exhaustive field recording. We try to gather as much data as possible from the fabric of the buildings. In most of the cases, using basic recording tools. In other cases, such as we like to call this building the French School of Peking-Hankou Railway here on the top, or this signal house of the Imperial Railways of North China. In some cases, we are using also 3D recording and modeling with the laser scanner or with photogrammetry. Still, our use of 3D modeling is mostly related to recording. We are interested in the potential of the laser scanner and photogrammetry as a means for capture massive amount of data that can be later used for our archaeological analysis. Obviously, you cannot perform stratigraphic analysis in this kind of model, but there are other analyses, typological, morphological, that can still be performed using these models. But as I said, we are mostly interested in 3D modeling, both as a tool to present the results, but also as a recording tool. And from that point of view, the tool is extremely efficient in mass data capture, particularly from the point of view of geometric documentation. So we can get all the measures, even the measures of the single bricks in a very fast way, and even measure dimensions that are impossible to measure in the field. In some selected cases, as it is the case with this signal station, we are also doing vertical stratigraphy. For those not very familiar with archaeology and stratigraphy, well, basically the stratigraphic analysis consists on the identification of the different stratigraphic units, in this case, integrating the walls, later on the observation of the physical relationships between these units, and finally, based on that physical relationship, a relative chronology that is later than, contemporary to, or earlier than can be established. And in this case, we cross-read the documentary evidence with the archaeological evidence to propose some absolute chronologies as well, and to determine the phases, the construction phases of the buildings. Obviously, as it can be seen here, the signal house was originally only this building. This is a later addition when the signal house was transformed into the house of a railway worker. So this is in very general line our project. Now I would like to introduce also in extremely general lines these two cases that we have been working with in Beijing. The first one is the Imperial Railways of North China, better known as the Peking Mukden Railway or Jinfen Dielu, that connected Beijing with current Xinjiang in Liaoning province, and the origins of which is in a mining railway that started to be built from 1881 onwards, and it was a Chinese project but counted on significant British assistance, particularly the engineer-in-chief for this railway line was the British William Kinder, Claude William Kinder. These are the sites for this railway that we have recorded in Beijing. These are not single buildings. So in most cases, each of these sites have more than one building. In many occasions, not preserved in the field, but as I said, we trace the materiality of these buildings also in the visual record, since we understand photography as a career of matter. There is no time, obviously, to show all these buildings. So this is just a few examples. Anding Station, that we believe to be the oldest railway station in Beijing. It's also the farthest from the capital. Well, when I say Beijing, by the way, I'm referring to the current, to the present municipal boundary, since in the late Qing it was bigger than it is today. And here we have perhaps the most symbolic, iconic building, Tiananmen East Station, which was the terminal after the Boxer Rebellion, and which is the house now of the China Railway Museum. One of the halls, because this museum has 3 different locations. Only as you can see the difference maybe is calling your attention between the drawing and the picture. Only this area here and this area here remains from the original building, this part here. Most of the building was demolished to make way for the construction of the subway and reconstruct to the south. So only this part is original. Still in these buildings, you can see many of the common features of Imperial Railways of North China architecture in Beijing. Most of these buildings use load-bearing walls made of bricks and have many common architectural features such as gable roofs, oculi on the gables, and also the use of segmental arches and points on the corners. But I will provide some more details on this later. The second case study is Peking-Hankou Railway, also known as Jinhan Railway. That was the first trunk line connecting Beijing on the north to Hankou, today's Wuhan, in the south and central area, actually. And in this occasion, it was also a Chinese project, but it was built with collaboration with a series of industrial and railway companies from Belgium and France. Although at the beginning, before the Boxer Rebellion in 1900, particularly this section was actually built also with British assistance, also with the assistance of the team of Claude William Kinder, because, well, for several reasons, it took quite a long time to sign the contract between the Franco-Belgian team and the Chinese administration. So in this railway, as well as in the Imperial Railways of North China, we find a combination of imported and locally produced materials. For the case of the rails, Professor Fan has already explained that many of the rails were produced in Hanyang Iron Works on the south, but also others were imported using the connection to Tianjin, imported mostly from Europe. These are the sites we have recorded for the Peking-Hankou Railway. And here two representative examples. Of course, there is no time to introduce all of them. To the left, you have the Changxindian Railway factory that was built after the destruction of a first factory during the Boxer Rebellion. So this one started to be built in 1901, but it continued evolving till till the end of the 20th century. So these buildings here, these are the workshops, administrative buildings, and houses for the engineers, are all located on the northern part of the workshops today. The rest of these, which is now is better known as RT Locomotive Factory, are well extensions to the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China period. And I also wanted to show the example of Zhoukoudian. This was a branch, mining railway, because it is kind of exceptional, since even though the same typologies are followed, again with gabled roofs and the segmental arches. In this occasion, this station, or railway site is kind of exceptional because there was a massive use of stone as a building material instead of bricks that were the common building materials in the rest of the railway buildings we have documented. The reason is that stone was particularly easy to get in this area, so the builders just made use of the building materials at hand. As for the results for the last 5 minutes, I will just show 3 very general ideas regarding building materials, building techniques, and building typologies. As for the materials, as I have already said, the buildings and the tracks, the infrastructure itself of both the Imperial Railways of North China, later known as Peking-Mukden Railway, and the Peking-Hankou Railway on this side, both combine materials imported from abroad, materials produced by Chinese people in China. We see this, for example, on the Sagentu, or Chinese concrete that is used on the bridges of Peking-Hankou Railway. But also we have cases like, for sure, these bricks of Pierre Engels and perhaps these other bricks of Imperial Railways of North China. We have in some cases, particularly in the case of the ceramic building materials that were produced by European people, in this case Pierre Engels, but on location. They were produced in Beijing, in this case on Changxindian. As for the architectural features or building techniques, as I have already said, almost with no exceptions, all these buildings are one-story buildings. They have rectangular plans. They normally have concrete or stone plinth and load-bearing walls made of bricks, gabled roofs, and these formal solutions such as the quoins on the corner. All these buildings are from Peking-Mukden or Imperial Railways of North China. Quoins on the corners, the oculi or round openings on the gables, and the use of segmental arches, that while these are not uncommon elements in railway buildings in other countries, at least we believe that at the beginning of the 20th century were kind of innovative or different in the built environment of Beijing, as I said, at the end of the late Qin dynasty or at the beginning of the 20th century. In some cases, now talking about Peking-Hankou Railway, it's possible to identify very clear typologies. We can see, for example, in these 2 pictures, these 2 and these 2, how in many occasions the same building design, the same building plan was used more than once to build different stations. And so particularly the stations of Peking-Hankou Railway in the area of Beijing, but also in Hebei and Henan provinces going south. They have this very recognizable design with two buildings that are disposed perpendicularly to each other, with in the main building, the station building or passenger building, with an arcade facing the tracks. This is obviously not a Chinese design because, well, it is very different from the architecture of its time. And besides, this is one of the few examples for which we have construction plans and the annotations where they are, some of them are made in Chinese, but some others are made in French. And so it is pretty clear this was French design constructed in China. So, well, in all this building, we can find a series of commonalities. Many of them has already been mentioned, such as the use of stone or concrete for the base of the buildings or the plinths, the brick wearing walls, mostly with gray bricks, but also we have red bricks, perhaps for the first time in China, in Beijing architecture, where the blue bricks were dominant. The use of the gabled roofs, and well, all those aspects that have already been commented on, and we don't normally find on the terminal stations because the terminal follow other more monumental typologies. And together with the commonalities, there is a series of absences that we can see in this early railway architecture in Beijing, such as wooden frames are absolutely predominant. We have not seen any metallic frame, at least not in the field. Domes are very exceptional too, with the exception of the terminal of Imperial Railway for North China, but more normally we will see gabled roofs. And also we haven't seen in any of these buildings reinforced concrete, which is not surprising because at the beginning of the 20th century, even though it was patented by the mid-19th century, reinforced concrete was still a kind of, in practice, experimental building material. So it would have been extremely innovative to use reinforced concrete here. So in conclusion, we may say that the contribution of these railway lines built by the Chinese and European countries together introduced in the built environment of late Qin Beijing, mostly new building typologies, particularly the railway station. Also new building materials, such as the red bricks that, well, we don't see they existed in Beijing before, or if these were not the first buildings in using red bricks, were among the first ones. New building techniques, such as the gable roof, much more simple than the traditional Chinese roofs, and also using nail woodwork rather than the traditional Chinese wooden work that does without nails, and all these architectural designs that I have been describing. So, well, these buildings were indeed very simple in most cases, but still we believe they help to diversify and even to modernize the built environment of Beijing in the late Qin. However, because they continue to use more traditional building materials and techniques rather than more modern ones, such as the steel frames, their contribution from the point of view of new building technologies was lesser. So, well, this is the team I work with, and many of the materials I have shown was made by them. This is very much work in progress. We have just started the engine of this SIDA locomotive, so please don't take so hard with the questions. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we have 25 minutes for questions and answers. So now everybody is welcome to open cameras and microphones if you want to, and feel free to make your question to the speakers. Otherwise, you can always text your question on the chat facility if you prefer so.
Yeah, when
Yes.
it's Yibing. Yeah, I'm interested
Yeah.
in the Zhengyangmen station in Beijing. Yeah. And you said that, you mentioned that a small part of the Zhengyangmen station now is the remain of the old one. Is there any evidence for that? I'm curious because I know that this is entirely a new one, a new station.
Yes, there is evidence for this. There are some photographs from the 70s in which you can see the whole building demolished, but not but not the northern wall and the little section of northwestern wall. And besides, there is also field evidence because the building materials in that area, particularly the bricks, match the dimensions of the bricks that we have measured in other stations. And also they use the same type of bonding, the same bonding type. And so the comparison of the fabric of these two pieces of wall is very different from the fabric or the materials in the rest of the walls of the station. And yes, we believe that that must be the original fabric, but only, as I said, only that part of the north wall and a very little section of the western wall, the one close to the north corner. There will be an article very soon about this station and the archaeological analysis authored by Wang Qianran with me. As soon as it is ready, I will send it to you so you can see all the details.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Fan.
Yeah, you know the direction of the new Zhengyangmen station is opposite to the other one, right?
Yeah, that's right. They use the clock as a reference and they reveal the whole thing to the other side of the tower clock. Yeah. More questions? Actually, I have questions for all the speakers. Well, not for myself, but for the other three speakers. I will make my three questions together if you prefer so, and later you can answer one by one. So for Professor Fan, I have two questions. You mentioned in your presentation some Spanish rails too. So I wonder if you know exactly where from Spain these rails came from. And also Jan Gimo found out that the Hanyang Iron Works was not able to produce all the rails for the Peking-Hankou Railway because the lack of coal, the lack of fuel didn't let them to produce as much or as many rails as they were demanded for the construction of this railway. So I wonder if you have more information about this, why it was necessary for Peking-Hankou Railway to import rails from Europe, while it was, well, here in China, Hanyang Iron Works were producing the rails for them. So for Paulina, for Dr. Romanovic, I would like to ask what happened with the materials that were found in this excavation. I'm thinking, for example, on the mining bucket, or more generally, what are the policies in Poland for the preservation of archaeological artifacts from modern context? When there is an excavation and very modern stuff from the 19th or 20th century appear, what happened with those things? And finally, for Adida, Yasmin, I had two questions, but you had already answered one of them during your presentation. That is how the local communities engage with this railway, because, well, it was made by a colonial power. So the other, you already answered that. So my other question is whether there are similarities or differences between the railway architecture from this period in the Netherlands and there in Indonesia. So to what extent the Dutch models were just built the same in Indonesia, or whether these were adapted to the local building technologies, the local building traditions, and so on. Okay. Would you like to start your answer, Professor Fang, please?
Yeah. The first question you ask is about the Spanish, the rails from the Spain, but it's the rails of the Shandong Railway. We also call it Jiaoji Railway, from the Qingdao to Jinan. But we know that the railway was built by Germany. So we don't have some, how to say, documents or some archives for why some of the rails come from Spanish.
Okay.
So as I asked you before, that is it possible that we can find some documents in the Spain to rediscover and find some evidence to reconstruct that history. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yes, I can try to look for information in Spain, but it would be easier if I knew where in Spain more exactly these rails came from. But well, we can.
Yeah, this is the only railway. We can find the rails to be used. The rails come from the Spain. I mean, this is the only one, the Shandong Railway.
Okay.
So, and about the Beijing Hankou Railway, we know that, as you mentioned, that Hanyang and Workstad can't provide all the rails to the Beijing Hankou Railway because of the, how to say, the low quality of the rails at that time. We know that the rails made by the Hanyang at that time have very high phosphorus content, and that made the rails very, how to say, not in very good quality, and they have to deduce the carbon content to make sure the rails works well. So Hanyang and Works have many, how to say, technical problems at that time, and just after the establishment of the Beijing Hankou Railway, and they rebuilt, how to say, import a new equipment for the iron and steel production, and then make the rails to be into the good quality. So during the period of the construction of the Beijing Hankou Railway, I mean, why the railway imported many rails from the Britain and the Belgium? Because that it was the British engineer to control the early stage of the construction of the Beijing Hankou Railway. And
I see.
in the second period of the construction of Beijing Han Cultural Railway, it's the building engineering.
Yes.
So that's why, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you
Professor.
very much. Yeah.
Thanks. Dr. Romanovich, please.
Okay, so first I will start with the bucket. With my association, I'm leading Association for the Stoczyn History. We have a small memory chamber, something museum-like space, and we have the bucket in our museum, let's say. And the second question about what is the law in Poland about the remainings from the industrial. I think you meant the industrial period findings.
Yes.
So there is some difference. It's really a question for me, and it's really difficult to answer it properly in one speech, let's say. There is the difference between the written law and the practice, I will say, in Poland. We are now in the moment where the written law is going to be changed, but it is impossible since few years because there is a lot of the people of interest that want to change the law in their how they want to look the practice, because the practice now looks that even if law says that everything what's under the ground, above the ground, should be protected, if we think that it is important for our culture and heritage, the practice looks like that the main decisions makes each district heritage service. So, for example, in our Western Pomeranian Heritage Service, we have a problem even with the 16th, 17th century findings. So when I speak about the 19th, 20th century things that should be protected, they sometimes look for me like for a crazy person. So we have, of course, some non-academical people who want to, for example, excavate or dig for something with the metal detectors. They have to have permission from the Heritage District Heritage Services. But when they find something in the woods, for example, in some industrial abandoned place, they are obligated to show it to the services, and they decide which of these findings should be used, should be put into museum magazines or their magazines. But a lot of them, especially those dated back to the 19th, 20th century, they give the back to the people who had the permission to dig it. So there are some private collections, and there are collections put into, for example, we have built in 1920s Bismarck Turm tower to the person Otto Bismarck, and there is a private investor who takes care about this monument, and he also has a private exhibition from woods around surrounding this tower. And the people who are taking some kind of excavations around, they are putting the findings inside this tower, but there is no any evidence for not any sign in papers, official papers of the Heritage Service that there is some exposition, that there are some findings that should be taken care of. There is some move in Poland called, let's say, connected to the heritage of small museums. They want to connect all the collections in the small museums or private collections, or some like our memory chambers in institutions, to put them into one database to be possible to use in the future for some exhibitions, so for some researches. But for now, as I shown you the picture of the viaduct from the beginning of the end of the 19th century. So because it is still used infrastructure, the heritage services have to give the permission for, I will say, all what should be done to be used it still and not be dangerous for the people traveling with the trains soon. So they even allowed to take off the trails from the steel with the nails from the end of the 19th century. And this just, I don't know where is it, where this construction went through, because nobody knows it.
Okay.
This is sad side of the how industrial heritage is treated in Poland, but we have to pass through this stage and begin the proper care of this kind of findings.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive explanation of the situation. Thanks. And Arida Yasmin, please.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the question, Juan. So what's interesting in Indonesia, especially in the Dutch East Indies at the time, was that railway architecture developed together with the development of the architectural style in the period where it's developed. So you can really see how the actual architectural development by seeing the railway architecture. And for example, before the 1900s, so when it just in the early railways development, the building was usually built by military engineers, and they don't really care about the aesthetic or the design of the station, so they just merely build what they know in Europe or in the Netherlands to the Dutch East Indies. So there's so many buildings that is quite similar in the facade. For example, the use of bricks, and that is still really resemble also what like Dutch railway architecture at the time. And it's really changed in the turn of the 20th century when there's also the new movement in modern architecture and town planning in Europe and also in the Dutch East Indies. So these European architects, they came to the Dutch East Indies, and they realized that there is need to like appropriation of the knowledge to the local condition and the local climate especially. So they start to design new railway architecture that really fits into the local climate, for example. So they build buildings with, for example, the front galleries, the use of double facade, and with the proper roof that also the proper ventilation that can help cooling the building. And also they realized that they cannot use bricks as much as in the Netherlands because of the rain in the Dutch Indies. So they use a lot of whitewashed buildings. But in general, it really reflects also how just architecture in general has developed in the Dutch East Indies by seeing the railway architecture. For example, also after in the 1920s and 1930s, where the use of Art Deco style is really booming also in the Netherlands, it's also come to the Dutch East Indies as well. There's always a lot of new railway stations were built in the Art Deco style, which is also really impressive. So yeah, it's really they try to adapt it to the conditions in Indonesia, but it just started in the 1900s onwards.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much. I think the situation here in Beijing is a little bit different, even though we can see combination of local and imported building materials, but the buildings look very much in general European, perhaps because the weather in Beijing is not so different from the weather in England, Britain, France and Belgium, from where these designs came. Thank you. And we have also a question by Jill Smith in the chat. He or she asked, is the interest and research in industrial archaeology more female supported than male in the countries our speakers are in? Well, I can say from my own experience in my department of industrial heritage here at the University of Science and Technology, Beijing, the staff, the researchers, we are half and half, but the students, I would say, is 80% or even 90% maybe are female students. So I don't say in the whole China, but at least in our Department of Industrial Heritage, yes, is more female supported this topic. I don't know for the case of Poland and Indonesia, if you want to explain what is the gender landscape of industrial archaeology and heritage there?
I don't think it's a female supported in Poland. It's mostly male. It is possible that I'm the only female concerning this topic in Poland, but maybe this will change soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, I cannot say specifically from industrial archaeology because I'm not from the field, but I would say it's also still male dominated. Although, of course, I think in coming years it's also gonna, change.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm the only female research in China, in the Chinese Academy of Sciences to do the works of the industrial archaeology. Yeah.
Yeah, but the new generations, I will say the new generations in China, there are more female students than male students interested in the topic. So it's changing here.
Yeah. And can I have last questions?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
very small questions to the Arida. Yeah. Yeah. Is there any relationship between the railway, the early railway in Indonesia and Myanmar? Yes, because the iron bridge, the steel bridge, the railway bridge you show in your presentation, the style of the bridge is very similar to that one in Myanmar. I saw. So I don't know.
That's interesting. For early railways, I wouldn't say there is a relationship because the Dutch has mostly interested to look at how it works in Europe. And also they see a little bit in India because it's also the colonial railway in the same period. I know there's a relationship with Myanmar during the post-colonial era with how railways work, especially during the Japanese occupation.
Yeah.
But I think during the early railways, I cannot say that is in the direct relationship.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so if there is no further questions, I think it's time to put an end to this railway trip around Europe and Asia. Thank you very much to the three speakers. Well, thank you to myself too, but particularly thank you to the three of you. An amazing work that you have shared here today. Thanks for Bill for taking care of the technical part. And of course, thanks to all of you, all the attendees. We had at that moment more than 90 people. So that you make these East-West workshops on industrial archaeology to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular, actually, online regular event on industrial archaeology and industrial heritage. I said before that this was a birthday workshop for the birthday of the railways. The next workshop is also going to be a birthday. We will be making 10th East-West workshops on industrial archaeology. So for celebrating that, the topic is going to be the production and consumption of alcohol from an archaeological and heritage perspective. It's going to be on May 2026, so please stay tuned to the AIA communication channels and to the communication channels of USTV in China. And I hope to see you in May to talk about alcohol production and consumption. Thank you very much to all of you and have a lovely weekend.